Good afternoon, listeners. First of all, my fellow Guyanese, let me thank you for allowing me in your space this Sunday afternoon. Today, I want us to spend some time dealing with two very important sectors of our country, and that is forestry and bauxite. As you know, forestry directly and indirectly support more than 30,000 families across our country. And it's important for us to understand where this sector is today, what are the plans for the future, but importantly, what took place in this sector between the period 2015 to 2020. And it's important because this year we'll be making decisions to compare leadership, policy, programs between two governments. The government that destroyed the sector between 2015 and 2020, and that's the APNU AFC government, and what we did. So we are, as always, accountable to the period we were and we are in government. And I will demonstrate to you, through accounting to you, what took place in the sector in our period versus the APNU AFC period. It is clear that we have to do this work now, and that is why I'm doing these live, because I heard one of the leaders of the APNU AFC saying they're not concerned about 4 years ago, or they're not concerned, they don't have to answer for that period. But you have to be accountable. You have to be accountable for the period you were in government. Of course, I understand that they're not happy with their track record, that they have a dismal track record. They have a track record that point to lack of policy formulation, lack of ideas, one that point to complete destruction of our economy, loss of jobs, and all of these things. But you still have to account for your stewardship. So today, I want us to take two sectors. So as I said, forestry will be one of the sectors, and then bauxite. The APNU AFC like to claim, and let me say this, forestry is directly related to some key regions in this country, including Region 10, Aichuni, Kwakwani, and those residents there can tell you with a clear conscience what took place in their community during the period 2015 to 2020 in the Burbage River, all over, when forestry was decimated. But the people of Region 10 even suffered further losses. Further losses. In a small area in Region 10, Linden, you had more than 500 jobs lost directly in the bauxite sector. That's 500 families that were sent to the breadline. You had one company pulling out investment. You had another company that curtailed investment because there was no clarity of vision. There was no the destruction that took place between 2015 and 2020 created a drag on the economy in Linden and Region 10. And I will demonstrate how these two sectors performed during that period, the APNU AFC period, which is the 5 years of their 33 years of rule of this country. The last 5 years of their 33 years of rule of this country. Yes, it's 33 years of rule. We were under the APNU, the AFC, the PNC, who transformed themselves into the APNU AFC formulation. As you know, over the period, they transformed themselves into various formulations. So I want us to look at these two sectors and to see the impact. Now let's take forestry, for example. You will see that under the APNU AFC government, which is prior to 2020, a number of issues would have transpired in the sector. First of all, during its tenure, one of the largest investors, the Baichunling International Forest Development Inc. and Barama Company Limited, were forced to exit the sector. Basically, one was closed completely, and one almost completely exited the sector. And this was as a result of direct policy intervention that shut these large investors down, affecting thousands of jobs. Also, Barama and Baichanling supported key infrastructure investment that allowed the small miners. And after 2015-2020, when I had community consultation with community forest organizations and small foresters, they said to me that the implication for the small miners was that the infrastructure that was built up, the infrastructure that was invested in, was left because the major players left the industry as a result of what the APNU-AFC did. So, due to the hardship faced in the sector, many small operators, as I said, were unable to produce. Since the market dried up, the Barama and Baichanling bought out most of the logs from the small miners, the small foresters. So that market dried up, and the cost of production increased rapidly. And why did the cost of production increase rapidly? All the incentives were removed. The incentives were removed from the forestry sector. There was no support in terms of infrastructure to support the small miners. So the export of the total production, which had reached a peak of 500,000 cubic meter annually in 2015, fell to 400,000 cubic meter by 2020. Exports of the forestry sector declined by 35%. Export in the forestry sector declined by 35%. That is loss of foreign currency. Then we had the employment in the sector, which exceeded 22,000 in 2015, fell to less than 14,000 by 2020. And what were some of the policies, some of the interventions by the APNUFC government that led to this collapse of the forestry sector? We had the onerous fees and fines that were imposed on small and medium-sized loggers, including Amerindian Loggers and the Association. Yes, when we went on the consultation, not only did the Community Forest Association in the coastland, but in the hinterland complained. They collapsed completely, where fees and fines were imposed upon them, onerous fees and fines, which increased from 415 million in 2014 to 910 million by 2019. Can you imagine that? A 118% increase in fees on not large foresters, on the small and medium-sized loggers. Don't ever forget this. They want to run from this record, their 2015-2020 record, when they imposed 118% increase in fees for small and medium-sized loggers. What resulted? The Guyana Forestry Commission, which reported a surplus of 215 million in 2014. Can you imagine? We left office, the Forestry Commission had a surplus of $211 million. By the time we got to 2020, that surplus was completely eroded. Due to the dwindling cash flow, the Commission was unable to pay staff. Yes. Under the APNU-AFC government, the staff of Guyana Forestry Commission were not paid for months. GPL was not paid. NIS was not paid for them. GRA was not paid. They couldn't pay the telephone bill. They couldn't pay the water bill. And this was during the period of the APNU-AFC government. This is the extent to the destruction of this one sector. I'm going to go through the complete record. But the forestry sector. And guess what? During the APNU-AFC term in office, the Commission had to pay employees in what? Alphabetical order. They had to pay the workers in alphabetical order. So from A to C, you'll be paid this month. The next month, from D to F will be paid. That was the state of affairs under the APNU AFC government, where were all the academic writers? Where were all the theorists? Where were all the policy analysts and the intellectual czars when this was happening? And worse than that, let me tell you, worse than that, the bonus that we give, the bonus that the People's Progressive Party civic government give, not to the disciplined forces I'm talking about now, but that the forest workers enjoy under the People's Progressive Party government, that bonus was taken away. That bonus was removed. That was the state of affairs of the forestry sector when we came back into government. And let us look now. What has occurred since we assumed office in 2020 to the end of 2024? And this is where the proof of the pudding is. This is where you make decisions, comparing what we left, what they left, and where we are today. Between 2021 and 2024, the PPP civic government issued over 150 small concessions and 5 large concessions. And how did we assist? Remember, 118% increase in fees on small and medium-sized foresters. How did we assist them? When we came back into office, we removed the VAT on machinery and equipment. They imposed VAT on machinery and equipment, not only the fees, all the incentives to support the small and medium-sized foresters. Where they're from? Region 1, Region 9, Region 8, Region 10. Region 10. That they would try to divide the minds of people on. This is what we did. The VAT on machinery and equipment was removed. The tax concessions on ATVs were provided. We provided tax concessions on ATVs. The VAT on exports were reversed. They had the VAT on machinery and equipment. They had the VAT on ATVs for small and medium size. They had the VAT on exports. And they had VAT on hinterland travel. Can you imagine that? People forget this. The APNU AFC government imposed VAT on hinterland travel, imposed VAT on forest exports, imposed VAT on machinery and equipment, on ATVs. We removed that. We removed the VAT on these things and offered those as incentives to the small, medium-sized, and large-scale operators in the forestry sector. The government also amended the log export policy to allow sawmillers to export logs. So sawmillers could go directly to the international markets and export their log. They didn't need to go through a large exporter. This is what our consultation and everything that we did here was through consultation with the Forestry Association, through consultation with our foresters, through consultation with all the stakeholders in the forestry sector. Then let's look at the Guyana Timber Legality Assurance System. This is an important system to support the future of the forestry sector. And this is an assurance system in terms of monitoring, in terms of evaluation. This is an assurance system in terms of keeping our credibility in the forestry sector. And this is progressing, and it's expected that the forest license under the European Union Forest Law Enforcement Governance and Trade Program will be issued in 2026. This is key. This is key for our competitiveness. This is key for entering new markets and higher paying markets. And we are already adopting future. So we're not only thinking about the present, we're thinking about how we're going to secure and sustain this sector, get new markets, higher paying markets, high yield markets for our foresters. And that is why we are adopting the highest international standards. 13 persons were granted access to over 200, and this is small foresters. Almost $300 million from the $900 million revolving fund. Yes, we established a revolving fund to help the small foresters so that we can help them in regenerating capital that was completely wiped out between 2015 and 2020. Through the various policies and programs, the sector has seen an accumulative increase in production by more than $15.6 billion since 2020. A sector that could not pay their bill when the APNU AFC left government. A sector that lost more than almost 15,000 jobs. Today, that sector has grown to the extent that the accumulative increase in production is more than $15.6 billion since 2020. Today, when we came into office, almost all the small foresters were wiped out. Today, there are over 550 small foresters who occupy more than 2.5 million hectares of land. And 22, they were all wiped out. 22 medium-scale foresters who occupy 2.7 million hectares of land. So, more than, if you check it, more than 5 million hectares of land is occupied by the small and medium-sized foresters. Employment in the sector has gone back, exceeding more than 25,000. We lost almost 15,000 jobs. Under the PPP, we gained back more than that 15,000 jobs because of the investments that we're making. Since returning to power, the PPP has rescued the Commission, paying off all its debts. All the debts we inherited, we paid off. And the workers today are being paid on time and not delayed for months and in alphabetical order. That is the forestry sector. That is the forestry sector. We now move to bauxite. As we look at the bauxite sector, I want to go through with you what took place. And you would notice they don't want to account for the period 2015 to 2020. They go to the people in Region 10 all the time. Well, they don't go all the time. They go when they need support. But this is their history. The APNU, AFC, and Associates' history in the bauxite sector. The sector collapsed completely. Due to mismanagement, the bauxite sector collapsed under the APNU, AFC government. Between 2014 and 2020, total production contracted by 40%. Yes, my friends. Production went down by 40%. More than 50% of the persons who are employed where? In Region 10, primarily from Linden. More than 50% of those employed lost their jobs between 2015 and 2020. And I'm not talking about the call center that y'all closed down when you came in the first day in office. Between 2015 and 2020, in Region 10, more than 50% of the employees lost their jobs in the bauxite sector. Then what happened? The collapse of the sector, the closure of Rusal. Let's move on. Let me demonstrate to you now. What is the current status? Since the PP Civic assumed office, a number of steps were taken by our government to reduce costs broaden product range, and increase production, because that was the important things. For us, we had to build back this sector. We had to get back that 50% jobs that were lost to re-energize the economy in Linden and Region 10. So we went about implementing policies and taking steps that will reduce costs, broaden the product range, and increase production. The government had issued additional reserves in Caracara, which approximates to 3.5 million tons. Additional investment by Bosai Mineral Group, along with the issuance of additional reserves, will see production increase by over 250,000 tons this year and 400,000 tons next year. This bauxite company also undertook to construct a $470 million aluminum plant. So they have made a commitment that with expanded production and with cost of energy coming down, that they are looking at in the future. So we're talking about the future, about the expansion and building of an aluminum plant. Export is also projected to increase to $163 million US at the end of 2024. So at the end of 2024, we had an increase, 250,000 tons. And this year, 2025, we're looking at a further increase of 400,000 tons. Our exports for 2024 is projected at $163 million US. The installation of the new kiln in Linden, the first of its kind since the 1970s, and the introduction of new technology, the MASS project, would have seen tremendous growth in this sector once again. Under the AP and UFC government, we lost 50% employment. Today, under the PP civic government in Region 10, over 500 additional families are expected to be employed in 2024. And another 500 families will benefit because another 500 persons will be employed in 2025 with the expansion that is taking place in the bauxite sector. In addition to this, the company is working to reduce energy costs by installing a PV system, a solar system, and of course, we have worked consistently with the company to protect their rights and improve the conditions of service for the workers in these mining companies. So if we move on, you will see some of the additional benefit that is taking place from the bauxite sector. You see the growth of production under the People's Progressive Party Civic. We can now move to the final slide that I want to show you in relation to what I'm trying to achieve. Let's go back to the slide on the growth agenda. The growth agenda for the People's Progressive Party civic government is about investing. It's about investing in the productive capacity of our country, creating policies and incentives that will enable the small and medium-sized operators to grow, to succeed, to compete and be successful, and to create an incentive mechanism to support the large-scale producers so that they also can expand production. We also want to achieve in this sector and in Guyana expand production, and that is why infrastructure is key. During the APNU AFC government, not only agriculture, there was no investment in DNI, there was absolutely no investment in the hinterland roads, in the mining roads, and in the infrastructure to support bauxite, mining, and forestry. Today, when we came back in government, we had to reinvest in those infrastructure and expand those infrastructure. That is the difference between a government, the APNU AFC government, that killed everything, killed the productivity of this country, the productive sector, and the PPP civic government that has built back and is taking our country forward on an upward trajectory. So on this Sunday afternoon, I want to thank you once again for sharing your time. And I hope I've been able to give you a deeper understanding, a greater understanding, and a comparative analysis in terms of stewardship and leadership. God bless all of you and continue to enjoy your Sunday.